Good. Thank you very much, Ty. So, as Ty said, today's topic is Microsoft Excel. We'll go through really kind of some of the fundamentals of using this application. I'm sure you'll pick up on a few things to make it a little bit more efficient to use the program. Since it is an extremely popular application that we use, I just feel that it's really important to understand some basics. A lot of times we use the program and we're self-taught, and we don't really get taught some of those fundamentals. So we'll go through some of those with you here today. So there is a handout available in your chat. So if you want to go ahead and check out the chat window, you'll find a handout there, as well as a practice file if you would like to follow along with the practice file. Otherwise, I feel that the handout will be extremely helpful for you even for after the session, so that if you want to look something up, go back and check things, use it as a kind of a practice tool. You can definitely do that. So at the beginning of the handout, you're going to find where it talks about just getting started with Excel. And what I wanted to do to begin is just talk about what everything is called on the screen, just so everybody has that basic understanding. So at the top left, of course, you're going to find your quick access toolbar. You'll find the name of your workbook. And of course, on the right-hand side, you will find your minimize, maximize, restore, and those basic Windows functionality. But the ribbon is right below that. Now, I may have different tabs on my ribbon than what you see on yours, which is just fine. We won't be using all those extra tabs that I have today. But basically what you're going to find on yours is you will find that we have the Home tab, which is going to give you the most common commands in every one of the Microsoft apps. We also have the Insert, we have the Page Layout, we have the Formulas tab, the Data tab, the Review tab, and the View tab. We will be touching a little bit on almost every one of those tabs in this session here today. So I'll come back and talk more about the ribbon in a moment. If you look under the ribbon on the left-hand side, you will find what is called the name box. A lot of times people call the whole bar underneath the ribbon the formula bar, but it's technically three different sections. So the name box on the left will always give you the name of your active cell. So whichever cell you happen to be clicked on, it will show you the name. But just so you know that that feature called the name box actually has more to it than just telling you the name of your active cell. It can be used to name a cell other than its normal name. I'll come back and talk about that in a second. So we'll come back to the name box. You do have what they refer to as the formula icons area, where we have the X, the check mark, and the FX. Not sure if you have ever used those before. And to be honest, I don't know if you will use the X or the check mark ever, but let me explain what they do. Let's say that I click on a cell and I start typing and I realize I'm on the wrong cell. I could pick up my mouse, click on that red X, and it will cancel what I was doing. But to be honest, I'd never use that because I can just press the escape key on my keyboard to do the same thing. So I don't like to grab my mouse and have to click on something and then come straight back to my keyboard. It's kind of a time waster, really. Now, the check mark that you see is like pressing enter. So if I click on a cell and I start typing my name, if I want to stay on that cell but complete what I was typing, I can click on that green check mark. Once again, I'd have to pick up my mouse and then click on that green check mark. The keyboard shortcut is what I use 99% of the time, and that is Control Enter. Normally, your default is to press the Enter key. Enter moves you down one cell. But if you want to complete what you were typing and stay on the cell, do Control Enter instead. That will keep you on the cell that you were typing in. Nice little shortcut. I do that all the time when I create a formula because I want to see the answer and the formula in the formula bar. And that's the last part of the bar that goes across underneath your ribbon. Right now, I am on cell B1 because my name box tells me that, and I can see the contents of my cell in the formula bar. In a minute, we're going to do a formula. And when we do a formula, the formula bar will show the formula where by default, the cell will actually show us the answer to the formula. So that's how it got its name, formula bar, is because of working with formulas. But of course, if I don't have a formula on my cell, it's just going to give me the contents of the cell itself. Okay? We'll talk more about that formula bar in a minute. By the way, I forgot to mention the FX. The FX, very important button. I use it all the time. It has multiple actions to it, and it's all related to creating a formula. So I'm going to table the conversation on that FX, which stands for insert function. Unless you already started a formula, then it's going to take you into the formula. Well, it's going to take you into the function arguments window. So I'll talk about that here in just a minute. Underneath the bar, you'll find that you have the column letters going across. It starts with letter A, goes through Z. It starts to double letter, and then it triple letters all the way over to XFD. So it goes all the way across to column XFD, over 16,000 columns across. On the left-hand side, you're going to find your row numbers. It goes all the way down to 1,048,576 rows down. So when we talk about an actual cell, we're referring to the column letter row number. That's the coordinates of your active cell. Now, I'm sure you've probably used that or understood that in the past. So just so you're aware of what those are all called. Down at the bottom, you're going to find your sheet tabs. You can have as many sheet tabs as your resources of your computer will allow. You can name the sheets up to 31 characters, uppercase, lowercase, spaces, but you start by default in a blank workbook with just one sheet. Now, I've actually said that word default a couple of times already in our session. What I mean by that is this is the way it comes, but it can be changed. So technically, we could change Excel to say we want 5 sheets every time we start a new workbook. So just so you know, those things can be changed. On the very bottom is going to be your status bar. The status bar on the left-hand side should say the word ready, unless you are typing information on a new cell. If I click on a cell and I start typing, it's going to change from the word ready to the word enter. When I am in enter mode, M-O-D-E, you can see that some of the commands on my ribbon are going to be grayed out. We have to be in ready mode to perform all actions. So I'm going to control enter to stay on that cell. If I decide to modify a cell, I want to change it, I can either double click on the cell, or I can simply just click in the formula bar or press my F2 function key, but I'm going to click in the formula bar. As soon as I do that, it changes to say the word edit at the bottom left. What edit means is that I am modifying the existing contents of the cell. And if you look at the ribbon, most of my commands are grayed out because I can't use them when I am in edit mode. So to perform all actions, we do need to be in ready mode. So ready mode is when we have pressed enter and we're just sitting on the cell. Then you can do whatever actions on the ribbon that you want. Just so you know, that changes. Now, the status bar down at the bottom does change on a regular basis, depending on what you have turned on and turned off. If I select a range of cells and they contain data, I'm going to get different answers showing up in my status bar. I selected some text cells, numbers, and a blank cell. And what I'm seeing is I'm getting the average of the numbers as well as the count of how many total cells and then how many cells that had a number. I'm also seeing the smallest number in the range, the largest number, the sum. Those are all features that can be turned on. They are called auto calculate. So they can give you an answer without you grabbing a physical calculator based on the data you have on your cells. Okay? Just so you know, it changes. At the right-hand side of your screen of the status bar, you will find 3 view icons. These are different ways to look at your workbook. You also have your zoom slider, which I'm sure you've probably used to zoom in and zoom out. So enough of what everything is called. Let's talk about entering data. When it comes to entering in information in Excel, there are some shortcuts that I want to make sure you understand. So before I get started with that, if you look in your handout on page 5, it talks about your mouse shapes. It's important to understand that your mouse changes the shape depending on where it is. If I'm up in the ribbon, I get the typical mouse pointer. If I'm within a cell, I get a T shape, a larger T shape. It's more of a block. And then if I put my mouse around the outside edge of my active cell, I will actually get 4 arrows, which is your move handle, where I could physically click and drag and move the contents of whatever was on that cell. You also will see that at the bottom right of a cell, you will see a fill handle. It's a little square at the bottom right corner of a cell. Let me kind of zoom in on here so you can see this a little bit better. So my active cell right now is F6, and I have this little square at the bottom right. If I hesitate on it, I will get the fill handle. It is a T shape. When you have that, you can use it to copy or fill in information. Let me show you an example of using this. Let's say that I want to create a list of the months, and I click on a blank cell and I type in the current month, which is March. I don't even have to press enter. I can put my mouse at the bottom right corner of that cell, and I can drag down or across, left or right, or go up, and it will fill in the months. So as I'm dragging down, it's going to automatically go from March to April, etc., because it knows the pattern that the months go in. So when it gets to December, it's going to start over with January. So we can use that fill handle to help us fill in things. It also can copy things. Like if I put in the number 1 and I take the fill handle and I copy that down, it's going to give me a bunch of 1s because it copied the number. But there's an icon that appears at the bottom right. If I click on that icon, it's going to give me different choices, because maybe I wanted it to fill in numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going down. I can click fill series and it will fill in the numbers for me instead of just copying the 1. It follows your pattern. So I could have gone in 10s, 20s, etc., and used the fill to copy those down. But another feature that I like is working with dates. So if I put in today's date, so today is 3/9/23, I'm going to control enter. I can actually have that fill in dates by dragging down again with my fill handle. But what if I wanted that to be months or years, or I wanted to skip weekends? We can go to the icon that appears at the bottom right once you use that fill, and you could choose what you really wanted it to fill in. So maybe I wanted it to just give me weekdays, skipping over the weekends. I can choose weekdays, and now it goes from 3/10 to 3/13. So going down the line, it's going to skip over all the weekends. So take advantage of what the computer has to offer. Anytime an icon suddenly appears, it's there for a reason. You want to make sure that you click on the icon so you can see what choices is it offering you. And then besides your mouse shapes, there are a lot of ways to navigate throughout a workbook. If I go to the worksheet called subtotal, I'm going to go to the worksheet called subtotal, and I happen to be on cell A1 right now. If I want to navigate to the bottom of this column of data, I could do so by doing control down arrow. Control down arrow is going to select all the way down to the very bottom of my screen. I wanted to make sure my window was maximized because it looked like it was kind of hiding some numbers over there. But just so you could see, it automatically navigated me to the bottom of that column. Of course, the opposite of that is if I want to go back up to the top, I can do control up arrow to jump up. I do that quite often, actually. Also, one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. So you just saw that this data goes down through 1,465 rows down. If I want to select this entire range of cells, going all the way across to column K, going down to the last row of data, there's a keyboard shortcut instead of clicking and dragging. The keyboard shortcut is Control A. If I am on a cell within that range and I do Control A, it will select that entire range. If I am on a blank cell and I do Control A, it will select your entire worksheet. Just so you know, there is a difference when you do Control A. So that to me is one of my favorite shortcuts because if I want to select that big range of data, sometimes when we try and do that, it goes too far. It goes too far to the right or too far down. This way we're controlling what it's selecting, and it's going to save you time. If I am on a cell other than A1 and I want to go back to the top left, I can do Control Home. Control Home here in Excel is always going to take you to A1. Always takes you to A1. Now, there is a list of other keyboard shortcuts in your book for you. You could go ahead and follow those, do some practicing with those. It's a good idea to learn those shortcuts because it is it is definitely quicker. I didn't know what I wanted to say there. It is definitely quicker to use those shortcuts than it is sometimes to use your mouse. Keyboard shortcuts have been around for a long time, and most of those are universal, meaning that you can use them in any other programs as well. All right. Well, let's talk about working with ranges. At the top of page 6, it talks about all of these different ways to select a range of cells. You can select a range of cells simply by clicking and dragging the range. That is probably the most common. That Control A, of course, will select the range that you are within. You can also, if I wanted to select everything, let's say I want to select everything in column A, just column A. I could start on A1, and remember how I did Control down arrow to move me to the bottom? Well, I could do Shift Control down arrow. Shift Control down arrow is not only going to navigate me to the bottom of the column, but it's going to select the cells along the way, just so you know. Lots of different ways to select your cells. I'm going to go back to the totals worksheet. I'm going to jump back to the totals worksheet. And at the top of page 6, it gives you a couple of keyboard helper keys, the Control and the Shift key. Both of those can be used to help you select cells. If I click on A4 and I want to select all the way across to G9, another way to do that is use my Shift key. If I select A4, hold my Shift key down, then click on G9, it's going to select everything in between. Or if I wanted to select B4 through B8, and then I also wanted to select A12 through A15, I could select my first range, hold my Control key down, and select the second range. Because maybe I want to apply bold or change the font or the font size or something like that to multiple cells at once. So Shift and Control are helper keys to help you select cells. So if you haven't used those before, you definitely want to practice with them. The entering data also started on that page 7. We've talked about the fact that you can use the fill handle to help you fill in data. I'm sure that you have already typed data in a cell before where text aligns to the left of the width of the column, numbers aligned by default to the right. But of course, any or all of that could be changed. Your fill options are at the top of page 8, where I was using that fill handle to fill things in. But I do want to talk about one more fill option before I get to calculating to do a formula. I'm going to go to the dates worksheet. And on the dates worksheet, I'm going to have the computer fill in some information automatically for me. So what I have is a list of the Outlander Spices employees. I have their last name, first name, date of hire, department, and office location. What I want to do is in column G, I want to enter in their extension. Their extension currently resides in column F. It's the last 4 digits of column F. The computer will follow my pattern if I give it the first extension. So I'm going to type 2099. I'm going to press enter. Then I'm going to do Control E. Control E is a keyboard shortcut, or I could have gone to the Data tab of the ribbon. I could have gone to the Data Tools group and clicked on Flash Fill. This feature called Flash Fill will follow the pattern and fill in all the way down to the last row of data. So it followed the pattern of taking those 4 numbers from column F and automatically inserted them in column G for me. So it pulled information out. I'm going to do the same thing in column H. I want to bring from column F the name of their office, lab, central, HQ, etc. I'm going to type the first one, LAB. I'm going to press enter. Another way to flash fill besides the Control E is I could start typing the first letter of the next building, the name of the building. So I'll get a C. If this looks like what I want it to do, I press my enter key and it's going to automatically fill in all of that data for me, which is fantastic that it does that. But Excel is an extremely smart program. And I'm going to demonstrate that by doing a full name. I'm going to go to column I, and I want to take the first name from column B, space the last name from column A. And I want to change their casing, because right now they're both uppercase. I want them just to be title case, capitalize the first letter of each word. I'm going to type it in the fashion that I want it to end up appearing. So I'm going to type Erica space Decker, and I'm using just capital for their first letter of each of their names. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to do Control E, and it's going to flash fill the rest of the names going down. So it looked at my data, whether it's looking left or looking right, because I could have had the data on the right. It's going to look at that pattern and say, hey, I see this data. I'm just going to follow it. So it follows not only taking the text, but it also took the actual formatting, the uppercase, lowercase, and converts it to whatever you want it to be. Absolutely love how that works. But just so you know, there are some additional things that we could be doing. We could be saying that maybe I want to have FSN. Oops, I had my cap lock on, sorry. I want to have FSN, and then I want it to have the person's department. I could put in tech.support. Oops, I can't spell that today. And then I'm going to Control Enter, or press enter, I should say. Then I'm going to do Control E, and it will automatically follow my pattern down by starting with FSN for every one of those departments going down. All depends on what it is that you need. You could be adding special characters. So if you're doing part numbers and things like that, and you want it to be 3-2*5 or whatever, or you need to add in EMP at the beginning, whatever you need, try the flash fill. It's a great way to follow a pattern with your data. So enough about data entry. Let's go back to the totals worksheet and talk about creating formulas. In Excel, we do a lot of different types of calculations. Probably the most common is to add together a range of cells. In your handout on page 8, it gives you a table of different operators, what the operator is used to do, and then an example of using it. Well, we could, like if we wanted to add together Q1 and get a total for all the Q1 numbers, we could simply just go to where we want the answer to appear, which technically could be anywhere, and we start with an equal sign. So all formulas start with an equal. It's really a hidden code to the computer to let it know you're going to do a formula. Then I could say I want to take C5 plus C6 plus C7 plus D8, or I'm sorry, C8. When I'm done, I can Control Enter. I'll stay on that cell, see my answer with the formula in the formula bar. Sometimes that is the way we need to add things together, because I want to take this cell plus this cell plus this cell plus this cell, and they're not in a pattern together. They're not in a row together or in a column together. So sometimes that is the way you will need to create a formula to add things together. But of course, there are shortcuts. We could go to D9, and if we want to create a formula to add all the quarter two numbers together, we could use a function. A function is letters that tell the computer what we want it to do. In Excel 365, there are over 400 functions available. If you look at the formulas tab of the ribbon, there's a function library group. So Excel groups the functions together, how they're related to each other. So everything that is financial related is in that category, logical, text related, date and time, lookup and reference, etc., going across. So literally over 400 different functions. The number one most used function is the word sum. SUM. That will add together whatever cells it tells you tell it that you want to add. So I'm on D9. I could do equal the letter S, and it's going to bring up a list of all the functions that begin with the letter S. Whichever one I click on, it's going to give me a screen tip giving me a description of what it is. As I scroll down, or type a U, it will narrow the list down so I could see the word sum. If I double click on the word sum, it's going to type the rest of it for me, because after every function name, it's required that we put in a left paren. So when I double click on it, it gives me the word sum left paren. Then I could simply select the cells that I want to add together. So I can select D5 through D8, and it's going to put it in as the first cell colon the last cell. So it's going to add everything in between that. This is more efficient if you have a lot of cells in a column or a row that you want to add together, because this plus this plus this plus this isn't always going to work. So this is a more efficient way to do that. If I control enter, it's going to automatically give me my answer. I can see the formula in the formula bar where it automatically added the right paren. Because it was a simple formula, the computer will add that for you. Now, of course, this being the number one function to use, there is a shortcut even quicker than what I just did. I could simply go to E9 to get the total for quarter three, and I can use the auto sum button. Because it's the most common function that we use in Excel, they did give us a button to automatically add a range of cells together. It's on the home tab of the ribbon in the editing group, or here on the formulas tab on the left-hand side, it's the Greek E. If I click on the icon for auto sum, it's going to look at the cells above where I am, and if it sees numbers, it's going to assume that I want to add those numbers together. If it doesn't see numbers in the cell above, it's going to look to the left. So my range of cells that it added is correct, so I'm just going to control enter, and I automatically get the answer. So that seems quicker than the previous example that I did. But is there a quicker way? Absolutely. I could simply click on F9, click the auto sum button, and press enter as well. Or let me escape on that. I could double click on the auto sum. If I double click on the auto sum, it's going to automatically, I don't have to press enter and confirm that it's got the right range of cells. It will just automatically give me my formula. And I could use the auto sum to add together each row and put the answers over in column G. But if you look at this range of data, I have an employee ID number. I do not want that included in the formula. So what I'm actually going to do is select C5 over to G8, where I'm selecting the numbers I want to add together plus the blank cells. Then I can click on the auto sum. The auto sum is automatically going to give me my answers to my formulas in the blank cells on the right. But notice that it automatically gave me these green triangles on each of these cells where the answers appeared, and it's giving me an exclamation mark. So as I said, anytime you get an icon, it's there to help you. So if I select these numbers and I click on this exclamation mark, it's actually telling me that I omitted adjacent cells, which means it saw a number in column B and it just wants to let you know that you might have forgotten something. Well, we meant to exclude that. So we want to ignore the error so the green triangle will disappear. If I click ignore error, the green triangle and the exclamation mark will be gone. They don't bother, they don't print. It's a non-printing character and things like that, but it's kind of annoying to keep it there. So usually I want to get rid of it. So that's your way to get rid of that. Now, is that the quickest way to really add together a range of cells? Because what if I had 150 columns going across or 10,000 rows going down? Is that going to be the quickest? I have to select them? Absolutely not. Let me show you another shortcut with the auto sum. If you go to the references sheet, I'm going to create a formula in row 9 to add together each of the individual quarters. I'm going to select B9 through E9. These are the blank cells where I want the answers to appear. I'm going to click on the auto sum. It automatically was smart enough to switch to each column and give me the individual answer for each quarter. I can do that same thing in column F because I don't have an employee number. So I could select F5 through F8, click the auto sum, and it's automatically going to add each row of numbers going across. It's pretty smart. As a matter of fact, it's very smart. Now, back to when I was talking about the computer being very smart. Sometimes it's not as smart as we want it to be right off the bat. Let me explain. I'm going to create a formula that is going to calculate the commission for each of these salespeople by taking the total and multiplying it by G2, where there's 4%. I'm going to say equal F5 asterisk for multiply G2, and I'm going to control enter. It's going to give me the answer for this first employee, what their commission would be. But if I want to use the same exact formula for the other employees going down, I'm not going to physically create each separate formula. We can copy a formula. By using the fill handle, I can copy the formula down for the other employees. But what it just did is exactly what I told it to do. Now, you may have run across this before, and you may have used dollar signs in your formulas before, which is called an absolute reference. Because what happened was it moved from being F5 to F6, F7, F8, but it also moved from being G2 to G3, G4, G5, which of course is giving us the wrong answers. We want it to always stay G2. One way to do that is to lock down cell G2. We could actually put a dollar sign in front of the G and in front of the 2. The dollar signs would tell the computer to not move off that cell when we copy it down. But I want to take you a little bit further on that because I don't usually use dollar signs anymore. What I do is I can go back to G2. I'm going to name the cell. So if I'm on cell G2, I'm going to click in the name box and I'm going to name this commission rate. I'm going to abbreviate COMM. Then I'm going to put in the word rate, no spaces in the name. I'm going to press enter. I just named cell G2 to be a named cell. It turns it into an automatic absolute reference. It is now an absolute reference. It has several other benefits as well, but now if I go to G5 and I want to create that formula, instead of using the cell G2, I'm going to put in commission rate. You can see from this drop-down list that I have this named range called commission rate. If it's a function, it has a circle with an FX. I'm going to double click on commission rate. It automatically changes from G2 to commission rate. I'm going to control enter. I get the same exact answer. And now I can copy it down for my other employees because every one of them will say commission rate. It makes it easier to read the formula. It becomes an absolute reference, and it can be used in any worksheet. It can be used in any sheet. So if I go back to the totals worksheet and I want to create a commission column for this range of data, just like I did, but I want to use that G2 from the other worksheet, I can go to H5. I can do equal total multiplied by commission rate, CO, double click on commission rate, control enter. It's going to give me my answer because it can use the named cell from a different sheet, which makes it more efficient. I could double click, of course, or click and drag to copy that formula down, and each one of my employees will now have a commission rate based on that 4%. If that value changes from 4% to 6%, every cell that is using that G2 called commission rate will automatically update. So we can control it from one place instead of multiples. And if I go to my name box at the top left, I can click on the drop down arrow for the name box. It's going to show me any of my named ranges. I can click on it. It will automatically navigate me to the cell or range of cells that was based on that name. So you can use it to move from one place to another within your workbook. Lots of benefits to named ranges, but enough of that for right now, because we've got lots of things we want to talk about. Let's say that I want to create an average of all of the Q1 through Q4 numbers, but I only want to get the average if the number is greater than or equal to 5,000. I don't want to get the average if the number is not 5,000 or more. I'm going to click on any blank cell, and I'm going to use a function called average if. I'm going to do equal AV, and I'm going to double click on the word average if. What it's doing is giving me a screen tip, letting me know the arguments that I would need to put in the parens to get the answer, where I would put in what is the range I wanted to evaluate, what is the criteria. So the range is going to be B5 through E8, and the criteria is going to be that the number has to be greater than or equal 5,000. Well, if you look at this and you're not quite sure what you should do, you can click the FX in the formula icons area or from the formulas tab of the ribbon. When you click on FX, it's going to open up the function arguments window. This is, I call it the helper window because it helps you to build a formula by breaking apart each of the arguments. If it's bold, like where it says range criteria, those are required. Where it's not bold, that is an optional item in the formula. So it's telling me right now that the range is the range of cells you want evaluated. I'm going to click and drag and select B5 through E8. Then I'm going to click in the criteria, and I'm going to type greater than equal 5,000. Greater than equal 5,000. And I'm going to click OK. When I look at this formula, it's giving me the average of all the numbers in this range of cells for the quarters. I can confirm that by actually looking. Now, by the way, if I look at the average down here, why is it different than the average up here? The average down here is giving me the average of every one of those cells. But I did it with an average if, where I said, only give me the average if the number is greater than or equal to 5,000. So these are the cells that it actually is giving me the average of. I can confirm that by selecting those cells and looking at the average down on the status bar matches with my formula. So there's several different options when it comes to what type of calculation it is that you need to use to give you the answer. By me starting the formula with the equal, average, if, and then clicking on the FX, that actually helped me to build that formula. I could go back into it at any time if I needed to modify it or verify what it's doing. I could always come back into the FX so I can break apart what's going on. But something that I didn't mention when I was in there, because what if you still look at this and you're not quite sure what you're supposed to do? At the bottom left of this function arguments window, you will find help on this function. If you click on that, it will actually take you to help on that. I got to move my help window over here because it opened up my browser here. It will take you directly into Microsoft's help and get additional information about the full syntax of the formula, as well as break it apart each of the arguments. It's going to give you examples of how to use it. I really like using the FX to help me build my formulas. Even if I know how to build the formula, I still use it because sometimes, as you can see with this formula, it added a comma to separate my arguments and it put quotes around my greater than equal 5,000. I didn't physically type that because I was in the insert function window. It did it for me. So it's more efficient. I can create the formula quicker and easier than having to do more typing. So if you haven't used that feature called the FX, the insert function or the function arguments window, I encourage you to use it. It's an easier way with all of those different types of functions. Now, those are described on page 10 of your handout using the FX. But just so you know, if I click on a cell that I did not start the formula yet, if I click on FX, it's going to automatically take me into the function arguments, in the insert function window, where I would have to then find the function that I want to use to get started first. Okay. If I start with the formula, the function name, and click FX, it's going to automatically take me into the function arguments window, just so you know. The auto sum is described on page 10 and 11. Also on page 11, it talks about the average function as well as the max and min functions. These are functions that are in the top 10, top 5 category of the most popular functions to use. So average is going to give you the average of your selected range. Max is going to find the largest number. Min will find the smallest number in a range. Okay, some things to practice with if you haven't used them. But let's talk about changing the workbook appearance. Changing your column width and your row height can be important because sometimes things don't fit. Like Outlander Spices goes over into column B. If I type something on B2 or B1, like 2023, I could no longer see all of the data in column A for A1. I know it's there, but the column isn't wide enough to see it. Or you might end up getting hashtags where you have numbers. Hashtags where there are numbers is a hidden code to you to let you know the column isn't wide enough. You can widen the column by going to the column letters up at the top, putting your mouse to the right of the column you want to adjust. You can double click to automatically adjust the width, or you can click and drag to manually adjust it. Okay, very popular feature you need to use. But I don't like to work too hard on formatting my data. So I'm going to go to the worksheet called printing. And I can see that there's a bunch of data that has been typed in, but it's not easy to read. I'm going to walk you through a quick and easy way to actually format this data. One of the ways to do that is you could go to the Home tab, select your cells, go to the Home tab. You could use the font group. You could use the alignment group, the number group, or the styles group. The styles group to me is a very handy tool to use. If I want to format row 1 as being a heading, I could click and drag to select row 1. I could go to my styles, to this gallery of choices for my cell styles, and I could choose one of my built-in formatting options for headings without me having to format each of those cells. It now gave me Calibri size 13. The one that I chose was heading 2. I got Calibri size 13 bold, and it gave me a blue bottom border. And the bottom border is a thicker line. And it changed my font color. If I go to my font color and click on the drop down, it's actually using this blue color. It did that all by default. I didn't have to do anything but click on the style I wanted to use. Okay. It can do the same thing using a style to format a total row. So if I scroll down to the bottom to C42, row 42, I can select the cells in row 42. Then I could go back to my cell styles again, and I could use the built-in style called total. That is automatically going to give me bold, and it gave me a single border on the top of the cells and a double bottom border across the bottom of each of those cells. So that is much quicker than us manually clicking on different features in the font group, the alignment group, or the number group. This is a lot quicker. So take advantage of styles if you have not already used them. It saves you so much time and energy than all of these other elements. But I do want to talk about if you're going to share this information, or maybe you're going to print this information, we have this commission column, column I. If you don't want to see column I, when you go to print or share this with somebody else, you can hide columns or rows. One way to do that is to right click on the column letter. When you do that, you can left click on hide. It now hides the column. If I want to bring back that column, which I can hide as many columns as I need to, I could select the surrounding columns, which happens to be H and J. I could do a right click, left click on unhide, and it would bring the hidden column back. So if you don't want to see something, or you don't want somebody else to see it, you could always hide them. But one of the difficulties we find with working with long ranges of cells like this is as you scroll down, you can no longer see the headings at the top. So we could do what is called freeze panes, where we could freeze row 1. So as an example, let's say that I actually want to freeze row 1 so that as I scroll down, I can still see the headings, but I also want to be able to see column A if I scroll to the right. I would click on B2. When I click on B2, I can go to the View tab of the ribbon, into the window group, click Freeze Panes, then click Freeze Panes. It will freeze any of the rows above me or any of the columns to the left of me. So now if I scroll down, I can see row 1. If I scroll to the right, I can always see column A. So we have different options for freezing, depending on, of course, how you want to look at things. If I change my mind, I could go back and unfreeze. By clicking on Freeze Panes again, I can left click on Unfreeze, and it will take the freezing off, so I'm back to normal again. The instructions for that is located in your handout on page 12, just so you know where that's located at. The cell styles that I mentioned also is on page 12 and page 13. The flash fill feature that I talked about earlier, where it could follow my pattern and fill in data, that is also in your handout on the very last page, on page 13. But there is something that I want to show you that is a definite shortcut to working with columns and rows of data that I don't always format my cells myself. I don't always do all those actions myself. Because what if I also want freeze panes and I want to sort and filter my data? I do not have to format myself and then turn freeze panes on and turn on filtering and sorting. I could take my whole range of cells and turn it into a table instead. I'm going to undo what I've just done. I'm going to Control Z, and I'm going to go back and undo the actions of formatting all of that data and doing that hide columns and all of that. So I'm back to just my raw data that I started with. Because to be honest with you, what I typically would do is click on a cell inside my range. I would go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. I would click on the icon on the left-hand side of the ribbon called Table. I'm going to click on Table. It's going to select my range of cells. And in this Create Table dialog box, I'm simply going to click OK. It now has turned my range of cells into a table. I'm going to click on one of the cells so it unselects it, but I have tools on my ribbon. I have a table design tab on the ribbon related to working in a table. So I could go to these table styles. It's got a gallery of different choices, and I can have the computer do the formatting for me, where it will give me a different header row. And I can have it give me what is called banded rows, where every other row will look different. But besides all this wonderful formatting that it just gave me, if I scroll down, it freezes the top row of my headings. So instead of it now saying A, B, C, D, it says the names of my columns going across. So it freezes my headings. So now instead of A, it says name, B, it says department, etc. If I scroll back up, I can see the actual names in the cells. And I could go on forever on the and features, but we can modify the formatting that it's using by going to the design tab, the table design. In the table styles options group, we can click and unclick the features we wanted to add or remove to the formatting of this table. We could have banded columns instead of banded rows, where it's going to emphasize every other column. I usually use banded rows, but just so you know, you could. We can emphasize the last column, the first column, the header row, whatever it is that you need. It's a matter of clicking. Then choose the table style that you want on your data. To me, this is a lot more efficient. And notice that in row 1, where we had the headings, it gave you drop-down arrows. Those drop-down arrows are used for sorting or filtering. If I go to department and I click on the drop down, up at the top, I could do sorting of this range of data by clicking on A to Z or Z to A. Or if I go to quarter 1 and click on the drop down, I can sort smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Or I could use a number filter where I can limit which rows of data I want to see. So if I hesitate on number filter, I could say I only want to see the numbers that are greater than or equal to, and then give it the value. Like maybe I want 5,000, similar to what I did earlier with that greater than or equal. Then it's going to filter my list to only show me the rows that match the criteria of quarter 1 having a number greater than or equal to 5,000. And on the left-hand side, you're going to see the row numbers are blue. It's hiding the row numbers that did not match the criteria. Status bar at the bottom left is going to tell me there's 26 rows out of a total of 41 that match my criteria. Okay. If I want to bring back all of the rows, I simply go back to the drop down for quarter 1. I can click clear filter from quarter 1, and I will have all my rows back again. So by turning this range of cells into a table, it formats for us. It automatically will give you formatting choices as well, but it's also going to give you the filter and sorting dropdowns. It's going to give you the freeze panes, and it even could do the total row at the bottom if we didn't already have a calculation at the bottom. It could add that for us. So I highly recommend, if you have not used a table before, turn your range of cells into a table. You could do it with 5 rows, you could do it with 5,000 rows, whatever it is that you have for data. A table can be extremely easy to use and to change your mind on what it is you want just by clicking and unclicking things. Now, of course, there is a little bit more to these tables. They can be turned into a pivot table and some other things, but we'll worry about those other features in another session of our class. So today I really just wanted to kind of walk you through some efficiencies of using this program called Excel, using your fill handle to fill in or copy things, using that flash fill to have it follow your pattern so that we don't have to work hard to try and get the data that we need to see on our screens. Also shortcuts with doing formulas in Excel, taking advantage of the auto sum feature, taking advantage of using the FX to create a formula. Those to me are things that I use on a daily basis. But then also things like formatting is going to make the data in your spreadsheet easier to read, easier to understand what it is. Because when we first came into this, I couldn't understand what anything was because it was very difficult to read. But in 2 clicks, I turned it into a table. I went to the insert tab, I clicked table, oh, 3, I clicked OK. 3 clicks, and I had formatting on my table. So we don't have to work harder than we need to. Take advantage of what the computer has to offer. Work small. You don't have to jump in and learn everything all at once. Take things in steps. Get good at this and then add some new features in. Okay. So Ty, did we have any questions from the group today?
No, I don't see any questions in the chat so far, but if anyone's holding on to one, then they're welcome to chime in.
Okay. I got to tell you, that table has saved me so many times. For all those years that I would, turn on my freeze panes, turn on my filters, have to click and drag and select and format everything. To have that table capability now is unbelievable. Such a time saver.
Love it. All right, yeah, no questions there. But again, yeah, for everybody that's joining, if you weren't here at the very beginning, please do check out smartdolphins.com/training. We have lots of sessions going on. If there's anything that we don't have covered, feel free to let us know. We're always looking to provide new content as well. Big thank you to Jolynn today. That was fantastic. If you are interested in private training, we also do that. So you can have a closed session with just your company, maybe ask more specific questions, that type of thing. And if you're interested in what Smart Dolphins does, feel free to reach out and we're happy to chat as well. But thank you, Jolynn. Thank you for everyone for joining and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.